Hello, everyone. Good evening. Oh, good morning. Good afternoon. This is Jane contacting from VisaPlace Immigration for our live session today. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me and see me, okay? I think you can. So if you don't mind just sending me a quick text on a comment session, just so I make sure that we are live. Okay. Okay, so thank you for joining, guys. I'm here to talk to you today about a couple of the updates that we have had regarding Canadian immigration. So a couple new good news came through. So I want to make a few comments regarding the, Canada's immigration plan for 2021 onwards. Big numbers were announced, so that's great. That's exciting news for us. So let's talk about that. We had a couple of articles being published, and you guys showed a lot of interest. So that's good. I also want to talk to you about the new app that the government has introduced and will be requiring travelers to use in order to report their information upon entry and after entry. So the name of the app is ArriveCAN. So if you haven't looked into this yet and you have some upcoming arrangements to enter Canada, this includes everyone from Canadian citizens returning, Canadian permanent residents, and temporary residents as well. So students, workers, and visitors, they are qualified for the exemptions. Okay, so we'll talk about the app a little bit as well. And as usual, I want to, I'll allocate some times for questions. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to comment them below, leave them below beforehand, so our team can gather them, and I'll be sure to go over everything before we end today. Okay, it's been a while since we last spoke, so if there's any questions regarding what we're going to discuss today or in general, I'll be happy to go over that with you guys as well. Okay. Okay, wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining again. The first thing I want to talk about is the immigration targets that we have for next year, right? So that's very exciting stuff, because 2020 was, a challenging year for everyone, and including Canadian immigration, and we fell very short, fairly short with the numbers that we had for 2020, right? So we had a specific immigration target that we were not able to meet. Right, so the government had set even higher targets for 2021, 22, and 23. So we have big numbers coming up, which is very positive, because it shows that reinforces Canada's commitment with bringing, intaking more and more immigrants as we go. And the vast majority of those immigrants, they are coming in as skilled workers, right? So that's great for those candidates who have been observing the process, have been interested in our in any stage of immigration, right? If you're just starting a research, if you already have an ongoing process, or if you're just now kind of getting familiar with the possibilities that Canada offer, and you're want to look into it for the next coming years. So definitely a good time now to get started on any process that you may be qualified for. We do have and those targets, they would include not only the federal programs, but also the provincial programs. They have become more and more popular, right? So even the allocation for immigration under the provincial nomination programs are also increased, right? So not only the federal programs, but the provincial programs as well are becoming more popular. In terms of numbers, the new targets would be that has been announced by the government would be 400,000 immigrants, 401,000 immigrants coming in 2021, and then similar numbers, but a slight increase for 2022 and 2023 as well, right? Which is really a historical number, right? Last time Canada welcomed that many immigrants was back in 1910, 1913. So it's a pretty historical moment for Canadian immigration, considering that the targets for like 2020 were 341, right? 1,000. So not so big of a number it's a big increase compared to what we are usually used to welcoming. As I said, most of those new immigrants are coming in as skilled workers, right? So under economic class. And that doesn't include only express entry, but also business immigration for the federal programs as well, self-employed persons program and the startup visa, also the PNPs, and the many pilot programs that we have ongoing right now, right? The Atlantic programs, we have the caregiver programs. So even outside of express entry, there are many pilot programs that people are being able to use, right, to qualify and immigrate under. So if express entry may not be the best option for you, keep in mind that there are other programs, right, provincial programs and pilot programs on a federal level that you can potentially explore. Okay, the best, as I always say, the best way to know for sure what would be the best option for you, the best option, the best immigration plan for you would be doing a more personalized individual assessment of your profile. Okay. A special emphasis have been added as well for the increase of francophone immigration, right, for in provinces outside of Quebec. So hence, you know, the additional points that have been added for bilingualism on the express entry system, as we talked about on you know, a few weeks back. So that's an indication of that as well, right? So for French speakers, it couldn't be better, right? So if you're bilingual, if you speak French and English, or even just French, there are more programs being, you know, targeting those type of immigrants. So it's great timing for those who are bilingual, and you know, for those who are not and are willing to study and become bilingual, this can be not only great and supportive of your immigration process, but also can be a good asset to have once you're actually in Canada. Okay, you know, another interesting piece of information or data that I came across is that over 70% of immigrants or newcomers coming into Canada, they are targeting Ontario, right? So Ontario welcomes 70% of all express entry applicants, which is a big number, right? That's followed by BC with 17%. So it's a huge gap, right? So Canada is, Ontario is indeed the most attractive province for many newcomers. But, you know, I'll go as far as saying that if you are considering relocating to Canada, do take a look at the other provincial nomination options available by in other provinces. Okay, those programs are indeed very active as well. We have like Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, those Alberta even. So they have very active immigration plans, and it's definitely a good idea to explore those as well before, you know, having Ontario as your first option only, or your only option, right? So be open to that too. Okay, so that's it regarding the upcoming immigration numbers. Very exciting news for us here at VisaPlace, and for everyone really that perhaps weren't able to complete their process yet in 2020, or are just now deciding to pursue this. So yeah, increased numbers of immigrants will be welcomed on the following years. Now, I want to talk about the new app, right? So the new app, it's a requirement by the government of Canada, and it will be used to assist the screening process upon entry, and also as a way for travelers to communicate with the government after they're already entered Canada, right? Concerning the quarantine period, and also would allow travelers to do a daily self-assessment in order to report to the government if they have any COVID symptoms or why not, right? So it's a great way for us to facilitate the whole entry process, right? Reducing physical contact between travelers and between the border officers as well, and an easier way for us to report to the government for those with symptoms and for those who, you know, are undergoing the mandatory quarantine of 14 days, right? So as of November 21st, which is just a couple of days from today, all travelers will be required to submit their information digitally through this app, right? And as I said, upon and after entry into Canada. Really, this is another one of Canada's efforts to stop the spread of COVID-19, right, by sharing travelers' information not only with the border agency, but also the provincial authorities as well, right? When you're crossing provinces in Canada, you will be required to provide those details as well. And it's, of course, a way of the government to verify that travelers are complying with the quarantine requirements, right? Have to report daily. If you're unable to use the app for whatever reason, then there's also a landline that you can call to provide your information. But the app is, of course, much easier to use. So, and you can download for free using your phone, your smartphone, and you might not. Okay. some questions that you might be asking regarding this new app, right? Like what kind of information you'd be required to provide, right? So of course your contact information will need to be there, name, address, phone number, so they can reach you. The purpose of your travel is also important, right? If you're coming in because you're a returning Canadian, or you're coming in for humanitarian purposes to see a loved one, or because you're an essential worker, or whatever it is, the purpose of travel needs to be specified there. Travel details as well, such as dates, flight information, the port of entry that you were coming in, your quarantine plan, right? So the address where you're going to be quarantining, if there's other people there, if you're going to be isolating in the same house with, people at risk or family members, or so those details will have to be provided as well. And as I mentioned, a daily COVID symptom self-assessment will need to be done through the app. So every day during your quarantine, you're going to have to be reported to the government to make sure that you are okay. And if you're not okay, then the appropriate measures will be taken from there. So you must submit your information before you board your flight to Canada, and you need to have the receipt ready to show to the CBSA officer upon entry, right? If you fail to comply with such a requirement, then you may be subjected to delays at port of entry because they have to interrogate you and whatnot, and even a fine up to $1,000, right? So definitely a good idea to be prepared there. If you're coming in through land or sea, then you might not need the app. It's highly recommended, but you might not need it if you're driving through upon entry, but you still need to use the app after you are in Canada to report your quarantine information, right? So good to have it. Yeah, and the quarantine period is 14 days. Of course, you probably all know that already. So you have to be in quarantining for 14 days in isolation after you enter Canada, unless you're coming in for humanitarian purposes, right? So if you need to see a loved one and you don't have the time to quarantine, as long as pre-approved by the government, then it should be fine. So there are some exemptions for the quarantine, but in general, it's a requirement for everyone. The app is very easy to use and very easy to download. You can find it. I'll be sure to share the link with everyone, but you can easily find it online as well. And if you're traveling with your family, then you only one person need to report, or can report for the whole family, as long as you're traveling together. So you can report for your spouse and your children if you're traveling as a family. Okay. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to go over with you guys, and I see already a couple of questions here. So let me start going over them, and we'll go from there. Thank you for everyone who posted them here. Okay, so oh, look at that. We just had a express entry draw just now during our session. So that's great. And I'm seeing the information here right now. Looks like we had over 5,000 invitations. That's a record-breaking number, right? And the CRS was 472, the cutoff, right? The threshold for 2 days draws that just took place, right? So today is November, not sure. November 18, and we have like the second draw of the month. 5,000 invitations were issued, and the minimum CRS cutoff was 472. So great. Hope someone on the comment section got an invite if you're waiting for one. That's good news. But okay, going back to the questions. I am from Bangladesh. I want to study in Canada. What should I do now? The very first place to start is to get enrolled at a Canadian eligible institution, right? And then once you are enrolled at an institution ready to get your visa, then we can certainly assist you on getting the study permit. You need to have the letter of acceptance and, of course, the appropriate study authorization in order to study in Canada. I want to come in under express entry from the UK. What should I do? Book a consultation with us. People usually... if you have done a self-assessment and you know that you are eligible under the express entry system, so we have to make sure that you're eligible under one of the 3 programs we have under that. They are administered under the express entry umbrella. Then we'll be sure to assist you on setting up your profile and pursuing immigration through that. Okay. From Brazil, it's possible to immigrate with this pandemic. So, express entry draws are still taking place, which is indication that, yes, immigration is still very much ongoing. The government has immigration targets to meet, so definitely possible. Canada does not discriminate against nationality, so it really doesn't matter where you're coming from. We don't have any specific type of cap or quota, based on country. So it's, it really doesn't matter where you're coming from as long as you're eligible. During the pandemic, sure, the borders are closed, so it's a little bit more challenging to enter Canada right now if you're not exempt. But nonetheless, people are still being invited. And once you have your confirmation of PR, then you're seeking entry to Canada as a permanent resident, then that's different, right? And hopefully this pandemic, this lockdown, border restriction situation won't be in place for too much longer, right? So definitely a good time to start looking on that. What is required for a work permit visa application? That depends, right? We have so many types of work visas. We have closed work permits, we have open work permits. Those are all have different requirements, right? But the short answer here would be you need to have a valid offer of employment. That needs to be LMIA based or LMIA exempt, or you need to be eligible for an open work permit. Most common type of open work permits that we see would be a student or a post-graduation work permit, or if you're coming in as a family, then your spouse is studying or your spouse is working, then we have the spousal open work permit as well, right? But again, it does depend. My partner lives in Ontario. I'm applying for a job at his workplace. What's the quickest way for me to apply? Would it be express entry? The quickest way and the best way for you to immigrate to Canada will depend on a few other factors. Right? So if you're a good candidate for express entry, sure, that may be a good option. But depending on the country that you're applying from, you may be able to get your own work permit. Depending on the relationship that you have with your partner, you may be able to be sponsored by him. So, if you think you qualify for express entry, or you have a common law, or if you're married with someone in Ontario that's working in Ontario, then we can potentially look at the spousal open work permit as well. But again, I don't have that information, right? So book a consultation with one of us, and we'll be sure to look into your case in more detail. Hello, I want to know if the service is free or not. No, we do have a small fee for the consultation, as you'll be speaking with a licensed professional, so there is a fee. But again, you're getting not only your questions answered in a more precise way, we also have the whole purpose of the consultation is to assist you on drafting what will be, what we call an immigration plan. So identifying what's the best course of action for you and walk you through the necessary steps to get there. Right, so you get a lot of value out of this 30, 45 minutes consultation with that professional, and it can really be, it's really the best place to start, right? You end the consultation having a much better idea of where you stand and what you need to do to get to your end goal of immigrating, right? Hello, my name is this, I am 48, my husband is 58. Which program can we apply for? We'd like to relocate, and we have a 19-year-old daughter at the university. It depends on what you do, right? What's your education level? So that may be a couple of options for a family with such profile, but it will depend on the type of work experience that you have, your education level, and things like that. Are we still processing spousal PR applications who were submitted in January 2020 and waiting for passport request? Yes. So family class applications are still very much being processed. If you apply in January right now or November, so you're certainly close to the final stages of processing. So yeah, you should hear from them soon. Immigration from Lebanon, the situation is very difficult. Are there any programs specifically to help Lebanese immigrants? Not necessarily, right? But again, people may qualify for immigration programs depending on their personal and professional profile, right? Especially if you have family in Canada as well, then we can look into that too. But nothing specific that is aiming to address the humanitarian crisis, unfortunately. How do I submit an experience certificate while I am a craftsman working in a workshop? Experience certificate, I'm not sure if you're talking about the certification of trade or if you're talking about employment reference letter to prove that you've been working with someone for X amount of time, but both options are on the table. Even if you're self-employed, we can, of course, can also draft employment reference letters, even if you're working for yourself or if you're not necessarily formally employed, right? Need to get an update on citizenship process by IRCC. Has the process really been delayed? Yes, delays are real. Many applications have been delayed, but they're still being processed, right? So you can expect a few additional months of processing, but citizenship ceremonies have been started to be held digitally too, virtually, so that's good. But some delays are expected because they are prioritizing other types of applications right now, right? What's the PNP visa? Is this the critical skill visa? It depends. Different provinces would have different types of provincial nomination programs, right? It's very diverse. So each province would have anywhere from 5 to 7 or even more provincial nomination programs, right? So they follow similar objectives in terms of addressing labor shortages in that particular area, but they are slightly different. So different provinces would have different requirements in terms of offer of employment or previous experience, education, age, and things of that nature. With the big numbers that we have been allocated per year for the next 3 years, do you think CRS score is going to come down at all? That's a great question. And I think yes, right? Because the CRS cutoff, it's directly correlated with the amount of invitations that are issued at a time, right? So more invitations would imply, you know, a decrease on the CRS. So I think that's very reasonable. This is always speculation. We don't know how the CRS would actually behave, but I think it's fair to say that the CRS should reflect the larger quotas that we have for immigration coming up. Yeah, that's a very good point. Which of the other programs do you highly recommend that doesn't require a larger deal of funds? In terms of funds, well, if you're not looking at a business application, because business visas are different, of course, but if you're looking at skilled worker immigration, then it really doesn't matter which program you're qualifying for, right? Because the proof of funds is standard for economic class immigrants, right, as skilled workers. So if you're applying through Express Entry or any other one of the immigration programs that require you to prove funds, we're all looking at the same proof of funds table. What's going to indicate how much you need to prove would be the size of your family, right? So depending on your family size, you have, you know, a larger number. But the table is standard, so you can find that table online as well for proof of funds. And that same idea you see for like study applications as well, study visa applications, right? Depending on your family size, you'll be required to prove more or less funds in order to have that visa issued. Okay, I am Nigeria, I'm 41, and I am a forklift operator for 2 years. Which program is suitable for me, and how do I go about it? For Express Entry, a skilled worker, it's required, right? So it needs to be an NOC 0A or B. There are provincial nomination programs that target NOC C and D, but then you have to look at those programs individually. And oftentimes a job offer would be required for those programs, right? So have to decide which province you're going to be aiming, and then go from there, look at the requirements from there. Unfortunately, someone with such profile would not be a great candidate for Express Entry. But again, there are PNPs that target occupations C and D. I am from Zambia, and I would like to get critical skill visa. How much is your consultation fee? You can find the information about the consultation on a link below. So our team will be posting a link where you can schedule your appointment. If you are booking a consultation after watching this video, you can get 50% off on your consultation. So make sure to use the code. I believe the code is Jane50. So just enter the promo code, and you get a good discount on the consultation, right? So you can have that one-on-one time with a consultant. It could be me, or it could be another one of our consultants, where we can look at your case more carefully, okay, and more focusing on your personal and professional profile. Okay, now, hello, I live in Mexico, but I'm from Venezuela. My husband's Mexican. Is there any way to immigrate to Canada? Well, just knowing your nationality is not enough for me to say yes or no. Again, that will depend mostly on your professional work experience, your education background, and your age, right? So those are the 4 major factors that we looked at in terms of Express Entry, right? How old are you? What kind of work experience do you have? What's your education background and language ability, right? So if you're bilingual, you get extra points, but if you speak intermediate to advanced, to fluent English or French, you can also be a good candidate for the express entry as well. Okay. I see so many questions. Thank you guys for posting those. Let me try to find the good ones here. Is it possible to start working on a work permit before applying for PR? Sure, of course. Very common, right? It's very common immigration path to see people coming into Canada to study and work and then immigrate, or coming in under any type of work permit, right? So that could be closed work permit when the employer essentially sponsors you through an LMIA or through an LMIA exemption, depending mostly on your nationality, right? Then we have International Experience Canada work permits as well, NAFTA-based work permits and things like that. So a lot of times people come into Canada on work permits and then look at immigration afterwards. So it doesn't really matter if you're in Canada as a temporary resident and then immigrate, or if you're enter Canada as an immigrant right away, as a permanent resident right away, right? In reality, like the numbers in terms of entry are much larger for temporary residents than for permanent residents. So the amount of people coming into Canada as PR is significantly lower than the amount of people coming in on temporary visas, right? So namely student and work visas mostly, but also TRVs, visiting visas, and then eventually they immigrate after they're here. So very much possible. Okay, what's the easiest way to immigrate from the US to Canada? Well, US, if you're a US citizen, you have a advantage in terms of your ability to get a work permit, because you're likely can be work permit LMIA exempt depending on your occupation. So that's, can really make the process a bit easier for those looking for employment in Canada. But that would be the easiest way, the quickest way, right? Aside from that, there's no special programs for US citizens. So we're looking at the same federal express entry or provincial nomination programs like everyone else. I am a Pakistani and currently Indonesian, pursuing my master's. I'm single. Okay, well, if you're pursuing your master's, that's great. It tells them that you're gonna get a lot of points for education. I don't know if you have some work experience that's required as well. It's not uncommon to see young students that are like pursuing their master's or even PhD, but they haven't had the chance to work yet or accumulate enough qualifying work experience. So that would be my first question to you. Can teachers apply under somePNP program? Okay, so there's a lot of you asking for my contact information. The best thing to do is to use the link for a booking, so you can book your appointment. Then our team would set up an appointment for you with one of the consultants. That could be me or could be another one from our team. But if you want to email and speak with someone directly, then the best email to use would be info@visaplace.com. Okay. And again, if you're watching this video, you can benefit from a 50% discount on your consultation. Right, so make sure to use it. The discount code is Jane50, and the moment you're booking an appointment, you have the opportunity to enter the promo code and get the discount right away. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And whenever you're booking your appointment, you can always, if you want to speak with me directly, you can always request, and then our intake agents will be sure to schedule with me. Okay. Okay, I am 40, my wife is 38, and are we too old to qualify? No, I would never say that, right? So no one is too old. There's express entry will take into consideration your age, but there are ways to overcome that shortage of points depending on what you do and, and your ability to get employment in Canada. Definitely don't think age is it's the only factor to be considered. It is relevant. But it's not the only factor, so don't give up just because of that. And plus 40, it's not considered too old at all. So definitely come talk to us, and we'll look what will be a good way or the best way to overcome the shortage of points due to age. Okay. I'm completing my bachelor's. Can I get a work permit? In order for you to qualify for work permit, you need to have prearranged employment or be eligible for one of the open work permit programs, right? So just by that, the answer will be no. But again, If you're completing your bachelor's, you can perhaps consider a postgrad degree in Canada or a master's degree in Canada, and that would eventually lead you to an open work permit, and your chances of immigrating after that are very good, right? I am from Pakistan. I'm pursuing my master's. I have a bachelor's. My IELTS got expired in February. That's unfortunate. You have to redo it. Can you tell my chances of selections for immigration? I'm single, 24. Yeah, I mean, just based on the information I have here, it sounds to me that you have a very decent profile. Right? You're completing your master's. You are 24, under 40. You didn't mention your work experience here, but that will be important. Right? You need to have at least 1 year of qualifying work experience, up to 3 years. That's how you can maximize your points. But assuming that you didn't mention your IELTS bands either, but assuming that you have the required bands, they're not only eligible, but also competitive bands, right? So you're looking at a 7.5, 8 as, a competitive band on IELTS, right? We know that the minimum requirement is 6, but with the 6 alone, it's unreliable, right? 6 is just the minimum, it's the bare minimum, unless you have a provincial nomination or a job offer or any other special element on your profile. With the 6, it's unreasonable. So you should definitely aim for higher. But someone with a master's, 24, with qualifying work experience sounds like a good candidate to me. So yeah. Which program is better than Express Entry or a PNP? Well, Express Entry is the best and is the easiest way to immigrate if you are a competitive candidate, right? So if you're a good candidate under Express Entry, is definitely the best way to immigrate, because it's more straightforward. It's a federal program. You already apply for PR. Provincial nominations are a great way to support those applications. They are perhaps not competitive alone under the federal program, but you are adding another layer of paperwork to your process, right? Because you have to get the provincial nomination by the provincial authorities and then eventually go back to the federal government, right? Because immigration is a federal matter at the end of the day. So if you are able to immigrate directly through Express Entry, that's definitely a better route. But PNP, again, they're very common because they're a great way to complement the profiles for those who need extra points. My CRS is 463. What are the chances of coming into the pool? You mean chance of getting invited? I think for 463, it's not a bad score, right? It's below the latest cutoff, sure. But as we know, the CRS, it fluctuates, right? It's not always the same number. It goes up and down. So, earlier this year, 2020, earlier back in March, May, we had the CRS as low as 430, right? I know this was a specific draw, but if it fluctuates, and it had been as low as 463 in the past, right? So I do think it's definitely worth joining the pool of candidates with the 463, and there's a fair chance that the CRS would eventually go this low. Yeah, I would be quite positive if I had the CRS, if I was working with someone with those numbers. Okay. How does PNP work? What do we need to apply for PNP after making an Express Entry profile? Or the problems is automatically picks candidates from the pool? That's a very good question, right? And things can get a little bit more technical here, but essentially, simplifying, there's 3 ways you can use a provincial nomination program to immigrate, right? You can receive a nomination and then join the pool of candidates, or you can, the Express Entry pool of candidates, or you can join the Express Entry pool of candidates and then get a nomination. That's when the province selects you based on the information that they have on your profile. And you can also apply directly to a provincial nomination program that's paper-based and outside of Express Entry, right? So PNPs, as again, we have several provinces, and each province would have anywhere from 5 to 7 different PNPs. Right, so there's many options, but you would go through one of those avenues, right? So you have a nomination and then you join the federal Express Entry pool, or you join the pool first and then the province may send you one invite after you're already there, or you apply through one of the paper-based programs that's independent of Express Entry. Usually the paper-based provincial nomination programs, they are most of the time, I'm not going to say always, but the majority of the time, they are linked, they're employment-based, right? So they're employer-driven. So it's based on an offer of employment from an eligible employer in the province most of the time. So the most common ways where you can see provincial nomination programs being overlapping with express entry without requiring a job offer is when you create your profile and then you just wait for the province to invite you based mostly on your formal work experience, right? So like we had this month, a couple of weeks ago, we had the human capital stream of Ontario, right? So the government of Ontario sent out, I believe, just under 500 invitations for the OM, right? So a lot of managers got invited. We had like 9 occupations that were selected. So people that are in the pool of candidates, the federal express entry got an invite from the Ontario government without having to do anything, right? The government just sees your profile and sends you an invitation based on what they see there. Right now, one thing that I'll say about that particular program is that the minimal CRS for the PNP was 466, if I believe, right? So even if you're like the federal CRS was 470 something, right? So even if you're a little bit below that, you could get you'll be able to meet the threshold by getting the invitation from Ontario, right? So I hope I didn't confuse you more, but there are a couple of ways that you can see the relationship between federal express entry and the provincial nomination programs. Okay. I have 2 years of experience. Hello, Jane. Since COVID readiness plan is being set for designated learning institutions, do you have any idea of if for the moment study visas are processed faster than before? Yes, I think that's the plan, right? Canada welcomes so many international students every year, right? It's a big deal for the country, for the institutions, for the colleges and universities to not be able to welcome as many international students as there usually are. So if you had plans to come in to study in Canada this year and it didn't work out, definitely let's look into 2021, because I do think that things will move a little faster now that the schools are more prepared. Everyone is kind of caught by surprise with this whole COVID situation, right? And the government, although Canada was very responsive very quickly, it does take some time for the necessary institutions to address and be ready. So I feel like now we're finally on a point where things are starting to go a little bit closer to what we understand as normal. And so I do think that processing times would improve, yeah, as we go. I'm in India and there's no appointment available here. We don't have an office in India, but of course, we help clients all over the globe, right? So it doesn't really matter where you are. Appointments can be done through video and through phone, right? Wanted to know what's the visa process. Do other programs other than Express Entry requires a language test? That's a good question. So the vast majority would be yes. The vast majority of the programs would require language exam. The bands required vary, so it's not always a 6. It depends. Different programs would have different requirements, and not every single program. There are certain programs that would not necessarily require you to have the IELTS exam. But I can tell you that the majority of those programs that would not require IELTS would be employment-based, right? So because the employer is already offering a position and you're applying for immigration to take up that job, I guess the government finds there's no need to have you sit an actual English exam, right? So as an example, the employer-driven program here in Ontario, if you're applying through that particular stream, which is closed right now, but eventually opens, it's employer-driven, you might not need a language exam for that one. But for programs where job offers are not a mandatory requirement, most of them, then yes, you need to have the IELTS or CELPIP exam. Okay. Another question about IELTS. I know you guys, want to avoid IELTS, but language is such a big deal for immigration, right? More and more, this is becoming the reality. So there's really no way to avoid the need to take the language exam. And you have to be good at it too, right? The standards are not because the minimum requirement is high, but because it's a highly competitive system, right? So there is no way to avoid. And if you look at the CRS point system, we'll see that a lot of emphasis is given on language ability, right now with bilingualism being granted 50 points, but just your primary language, just if it's English or French alone, it makes up a huge, a large portion of your CRS, right? So language is probably I don't want to say the easiest, but it's probably the element, if you look at your CRS breakdown, that you have the most control, right, on improving, right? Oftentimes, the best advice that I can give a lot of candidates that are looking to improve their CRS is just max out your points for language, right? There is nothing easier to do in terms of increasing your points than maximizing your points for language. So definitely worth investing there. Sometimes even a half point on the IELTS exam can make a significant difference on your CRS. Trust me on this, right? So it's really important. I'm 29 years old, working in the US on an H1B visa for 7 years. I'm interested to know what are my options to immigrate to Canada. So we have a lot of clients in this situation, right? So a lot of OPT or H1B visa holders in the US, foreign nationals looking to Canada as a more reliable, option that will lead you to permanent residency a lot faster than the immigration programs available in the US. So, you didn't mention your work experience or your education here, but you're under 30, so that's good. Assuming that you're able to get good bands, you've been working in the US for 7 years, so good bands on the language exam, you sound to me that you could be a very good candidate for express entry too, right? So definitely book an appointment. We'll look into it more carefully with you and let you know what's the best course of action for someone with such a profile. Okay, and this is in general an advice that we have so many applicants from the US, people that are currently in the US on temporary visas looking to Canada as a more reliable option for immigration. Does a valid job offer eliminates the need for an LMIA? I've been working on this job for a year, so I understand that I don't need an LMIA. A very good question too, right? This is a very common mistake that a lot of people make when they're navigating their express entry profile. So a valid job offer under the express entry system is a job offer that is validated by an LMIA or LMIA exempt. So that means if you're working because you have an open work permit, then you're not going to be able to claim points for that job offer. A lot of people used to make this mistake a lot. The system now is not going to allow you to do that. So even if you try to claim points, the system would automatically reduce those points, because people used to make the mistake so often. And then after the officer makes the assessment, he sees that the job offer is not valid for point purposes, and then you have to decrease the 50 points, and then people lose their invitations to apply, right? So now the system is getting a little smarter. But the important thing to keep in mind is that even if you're allowed to work in Canada, if you have an open work permit, that doesn't necessarily automatically implies that you have a valid job offer in terms of claiming points for it, right? Now, if you have an intercompany transfer work permit or a NAFTA work permit or any other type of work permit that is employer specific, so usually a closed work permit, right? It could be LMIA based or LMIA exempt, and there are several exemptions for the LMIA. Open work permits is a type of LMIA exemption, but if it's open, then it's not eligible for points in terms of the CRS point system. Okay, so that would exclude spousal open work permits. It would exclude post-graduation work permits and working holiday work permits as well. So yeah. Express entry applications valid for a year. Can it be renewed after the expiry, or you need to submit a new application? You need to submit a new application. You have to make sure that your exams remain valid and your education credential assessment remains valid. Right? The language exam is valid for 2 years, and education credential assessment is valid for 5 years. Right? So as long as everything is still valid, you can recreate your profile. For French-speaking person with intermediate level of English, Ontario, New Brunswick. I'll say both. Right? Let's try for both. In Ontario, we do have the Francophone program, and alone, just by the federal express entry can already get additional points depending on your level of English, right? So definitely don't close the doors for either province. If you're not in Canada, you can, indicate your interest to relocate to either of those provinces, and then if you get an invitation from one or another, then you can choose which one you want to pursue, or whichever comes first. But yeah, if you're a French speaker, great timing. It's definitely good looking into it. And as you know already, there are options, right? There's several provinces they are targeting those French-speaking individuals. Where can someone take the English exam in Cameroon? You would have, the best thing to do is to look at IELTS website, right? You would have a little map with instructions where you can find the nearest center. I am 40. Do I have a chance to immigrate? So as I said, age alone, it's not going to bar you from qualifying for immigration. So don't be disencouraged. Those who are like 35, 40 plus. There's still very much possible to immigrate. Age is a relevant factor, but it's not the only factor, right? So there's definitely ways to overcome shortage of points. And again, Express Entry is not the only way to immigrate either. I have PNPs, we have federal business programs. So definitely don't reduce your options just because age, right? Okay, guys, so it's been 45 minutes. Thank you for all your questions. I hope I was helpful on answering a couple of them. It's really difficult to do a general, detailed assessment just without having all the information that we need. So if you want to know for sure where you stand and what will be the best course of action for you, book an appointment with us. We are here to help. We've been here throughout this whole pandemic situation. We're now at the end of it, hopefully. And if you have questions about, if you're planning on returning to Canada and you have questions about how to use the app, the new ArriveCAN, and why not, we can also assist with that too. And yeah, I wish you all a good rest of the day, good afternoon, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.